For his latest film, Canadian director Sean Garrity is returning to a familiar genre, the romantic comedy. I Propose We Never See Each Other Again After Tonight, which opens theatrically across Canada on Friday, September the 4th, is a total winner. I recently had a chance to speak with the writer director about shooting a romantic film in the most unromantic of seasons, a Winnipeg winter, the chemistry between his two leads, and his discovery of Hera Nalam, who is a star.
You first.
I just tell you a secret.
Yeah, anything random.
I have a fear.
You have a fear?
I have a fear. I'm scared of horses.
Why?
I don't. I don't know. I honestly do
Is
not
it
know.
just the way they look? Is it the
Yes,
sound?
they're weird looks. It feels like maybe they know how you feel. Maybe I don't know.
Wow.
I don't trust them at all.
I mean, sure.
Fully afraid. And I wish I had like a cool story where I was like caught in a
Yeah,
horse
you know.
stampede, but
Yeah,
no,
or something like you were on a horse and then you fell off or something.
Not even that. Never even got on the horse.
Good start.
You're a newcomer to Winnipeg, and the city plays such a key part in the movie. Like as soon as it opens, you're like, oh wow, okay, this is a place that I kind of recognize. It's and it's funny that you capture the story and you tell the story in the middle of the winter. I mean, one of the jokes with Winnipeg is we call it Winterpeg, right? So it's
That's
so
right. That's right. Although I'm actually not a newcomer. I'm actually from here originally.
Oh wow.
Yeah, born and raised here, and then I moved to Toronto. What was it, 2010? I mean, I've bounced around and I've lived here and there, but if you looked at a map of where I have lived in my life, it's always like Winnipeg and then somewhere else, and then Winnipeg and then somewhere else, and then Winnipeg and then somewhere else, and it's always like back to home base and then out to live somewhere else. Have you seen Guy Madden's My Winnipeg, that
I
movie?
sure have.
There's a line at the beginning of that movie that is just, like everything Guy Madden does, so perfect and expresses what it's like being a Winnipegger, which is the very beginning of the movie. He's falling asleep on the train, and the voiceover says, "This time I'm leaving Winnipeg for good again." And that's what it is. So we're back.
But I mean, is this the first film you've actually made in Winnipeg?
No, no. In fact, most of my movies have been shot here. Even when we were living in Toronto, we would fly back here to shoot because Jonas, who I worked with on a number of those films, Borealis and Awkward Sexual Adventure, and I mean, he's also from Winnipeg.
Mm-hmm.
So, we would concoct these stories in Toronto. We'd come back to Winnipeg to shoot them, and then we'd go back to Toronto to post-production
That's
the
so
films.
funny.
But yeah, it's like the ancestral homeland, the home of our mythologies, of our personal mythologies. So we have to shoot everything here.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. And I'm curious, so how did this particular story come about? I mean, you've made romantic comedies before, but there's something really, this isn't so much, I mean, it has some funny moments, but I don't think it's so much of a comedy as much as a really sort of down to earth and really relatable romance.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say. Yeah, I wanted to do a very Winnipeg story, and I've had the idea to do. Over the years, you sort of go like, oh, this would be a funny idea, like in a Winnipeg movie, and I'd put it in a file, and oh, this would be a great scene in a Winnipeg movie, and I put that in a file, and then just over the years, they sort of collected. And when I moved back here just recently, I was like overcome with a desire to express. You move back somewhere. I mean, you're born and raised in Vancouver, right?
No, actually not. But I've been here a very, very long time.
Yeah. And so you have that thing where if you go away on a trip, you come back to Vancouver. And when you first come back, you're like, oh, Vancouver. Oh, how I love you. Oh, how I missed you, Vancouver. And so I had some of that. I mean, we moved back to Winnipeg and I was like, oh, so good to finally be back to this place. And so that gave birth to the idea of like, okay, this is the moment for a very Winnipeg movie. And I sort of thought I want to work in rom-com again. And I want my main characters to be Filipino and Mennonite, which are two communities that really define Winnipeg. I think outside of Winnipeg, most people don't. I used to joke with people saying, hey, guess the answer to this question. 1 out of every 10 Winnipeggers is, and fill in the blank. And they'd say, well, Frozen? Like, there'd be all sorts of things they would guess. but no one ever guesses Filipino, which is the case here. And so I kind of thought I would want to like sort of ground the rom-com in those two communities. Now, as it turned out, as I developed it, it ended up being much more Filipino than Mennonite, obviously. Yeah, and the wedding social at the end, which is a very specific kind of fundraiser party that we do in Manitoba, is also something that a lot of Manitobans talk about as a cultural manifestation that they identify themselves by, but I've never seen one in a movie.
So I mean, and there's actually a few things here. And I haven't even mentioned the name of the movie, which I love. I propose we never see each other again after tonight, because even the title kind of suggests one thing, and it plays completely opposite to that, which I think is lovely. But I mean, you touch on so many things here that are so specific, but also very universal. And I have a couple of questions that kind of relate to that. I mean, the one thing, like you talk about the social, which feels like it's something that is clearly part of the community and the culture, but like you say, it's not something that you usually see on screen. The fact that this entire thing, the entire relationship takes place and unfolds during a winter, which is such an unappealing time. Like everybody is bundled up and covered, and you're in like 5 layers, and your face is half covered. I mean, and you play into that so well. And I'm really curious about how some of these nuggets kind of develop in your mind, and you kind of think, okay, well, that's something that can go in this.
Yeah, I mean, I think Winnipeg obviously is, those of us who live here, we love the summer. It's summer right now. Winnipeg summers are beautiful and gorgeous, but there's no question that the mythology of Winnipeg, I think, is very wrapped up in, concepts of winter. And our winters are certainly among the most brutal in the country. So, but I've always found a particular beauty in winter, maybe because I grew up here, but it's just, there's something about photographing winter that I've always really been attracted to. And it's so difficult to do because no crews want to work in those really, really terrible 3 months. So I had to work hard to convince my guys to go out because, yeah, I mean, our first night, that first scene that you see in the movie where they meet pushing that car out of the snow, our rig actually froze. We actually had to go handheld because our camera rig froze and wouldn't work. And so, that's shooting in Winnipeg. But that kind of sense of the beauty of winter, and obviously, there's the obvious metaphor as well, because we shot it over 3 months. Of the movie starts in January, and the roads are covered in ice, and the sidewalks are covered in ice, and everything is white, and everyone's bundled up. But by the time we get to the end of the movie, it's the end of April. And like the relationship, and like how much they know about each other, and like so many other things going on in the movie as secrets get revealed and wherever else, I feel like the snow has kind of pulled back, and what's underneath has sort of been revealed, and things have warmed up, and all of those other kind of on the nose metaphors for relationships are sort of at play. And we shot the film chronologically in order to sort of maximize that.
Okay, so that leads into actually a couple of interesting questions that I had for you about the fact that, one, this feels like a very real and intimate story. Like it doesn't play into a lot of the cliches. Like you mentioned that the way that the timeline unfolds certainly plays into a theme with the film. But I think the film really avoids a lot of the cliches that are so typical of romantic comedies. And one of the things that I really, really love is how real and authentic it feels. And I'm curious about how, one, this cast, because Hera is amazing, and I cannot believe this is her first film. I want to know where you found her, and how did the casting work? To find the partner, like how did that all come together? Because they feel so natural together.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that. I mean, I had to really work hard to find the cast because one of the great tragedies that I've discovered in making this movie is that despite the fact that the Filipino community is so cornerstone to the culture of this city, we just haven't really put them in our movies and in our TV shows. They're kind of largely absent, which is so weird. So when I started casting this movie, I went to my casting directors and I said, okay, I have 20 parts for Filipinos. And so I'm going to want to audition, 3 or 4 people for each part. We're looking for 60 to 80 people that I want to bring in. And my casting directors were like, okay, I have 5 Filipinos that I can bring in. And I was like, what? 5? So we really had to sort of go underground, and I talked to a lot of the Filipinos that I know, and I sort of said, who do you know who acts? Who do you know that's done theater? In the end, I was actually talking to drama teachers from local high schools with large Filipino populations saying, who did you see come through here who was a great actor who you thought should have gone into acting but is a dental hygienist instead? And certainly the Filipino community in Winnipeg is very musical. Lots of people from that community are singer-songwriters, or, you know, the mom and dad actually host a karaoke night at a Filipino karaoke joint in the north end of the city. That's how I found them. They do a comedy routine, the two of them together. But Hera, I found through a Filipino friend on Facebook, and she was posting videos of herself performing her songs that she writes and sings. And so I sent her a Facebook message and said, do you act as well? And she said, yes, I do. So I said, please come out to my audition. And she came out to actually audition for a small role, the role of the daughter in Morden, who sort of says, oh, no one lives there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I know where that house is. So that's the role she came out to audition for. And she walked into the audition room, and we auditioned her. I like to audition people two at a time so they can play off each other. So she's auditioning with somebody else. And I was just like, oh my God, who is this? And so I said, okay, sir, you're fine. Thank you very much. We'll bring in someone else. But I said, Hera, if you don't mind, could you stay for a minute? And we kept her in that room for 40 minutes. We played her off of like 12 different actors and actresses. And she walked out of the room, the audition room, and I turned to my co-producer and my casting director, and we were both like, I'm so sad to see her go. Like, I'm sad that I'm not watching her anymore. And so right then I was like, my God, I leapt up from my chair and I ran to the door before she got out of the building, and I said, hey, would you be interested in playing the lead role in this thing? To which she responded, no, I would not be interested. And I was like, but no, I mean, like the lead role in the movie. She's like, yeah, I know what you mean. I can't do it. And I was like, well, but I what? And she was like, I'm going to play. We haven't started rehearsing yet, but I got cast as a lead in this play, and so I won't be able to give you the days that you need to shoot that. And I was like, okay, let me convince you that you should walk away from that play. I was like, if you haven't started rehearsals yet, I'm sure they can find another actor. This is like the lead in this movie. And she was like, yeah, I get it, but I promised them I'd do it, so sorry. Next time. And she walked off. And I was like, no, I can't. So I called her up, and I was like later, and I was like, hey, listen, I put you on the spot. I didn't give you an opportunity to really think about it. I want to offer you again. I can talk to the people who run that theater company because they're all friends of mine. It's Winnipeg. One of them used to date my sister. I can talk to them, and I get that you can't walk away from a play because Winnipeg, it's your bread and butter for an actor to walk, theater, and you don't want to make them angry by walking away to do a film. So I get that. I was like, I will talk to them, and I will convince them, and then I'll call you back. Is that okay? And she was like, nope. And I kept going back, and in the end, at one point, she said, if you guys were able to shoot weekends when I'm not in the play, then okay, that's what I could do. And so I talked to my crew, and I was like, guys, this woman is going to carry this movie for us. Could you shoot on weekends? And luckily, Winnipeg had a string of movies back to back to back to back, and everyone had just been working nonstop. And a lot of the crew was like, actually, yeah, they said the chance to see our families a little bit during the week while we're working might be nice. So that's part of what led to the shooting being 3 months and you being and us seeing the change of seasons in the background, is that we had to shoot weekends to accommodate poor Hera, who was basically acting 7 days a week from January till April of that year.
That's crazy.
It's a crazy story. But I mean, I think what you see in the movie is absolutely what I saw in that audition room. Like when she walked in and she started acting right away, you get that sense of like, okay, this is her right here. This is our lead. She's just got that charisma, but not only that charisma, that sense of like opening up and letting you right in with what she's feeling and what's going on. It's just, she's got a really incredible mastery of her craft. So yeah, I was not going to let her go.
No, she's quite the find. And I mean, she plays so well against Kristian, and I'm curious, how did you pair the two of them together?
So similarly, I auditioned my boys separately from my leading ladies. But once I had them down to once I knew it was Hera, and we got our boys down to like 3, and I auditioned all 3 of them with Hera. And we played for like quite a while, actually, playing different scenes and different moods and whatever else, and trying different things. And then at the end of the day, I sort of said to her, so, I mean, I know who I kind of like, but who did you like? And she's never been in a film before, and so she didn't want to lose anyone a gig, so she was like, oh, they're all good. And I was like, yeah, but you must have liked one more than the other or something. No, they were all, and I kept pushing her to give me some inkling of what she was actually feeling, until she sort of said, there was that moment, because I had them do a scene back to back. There was that moment in those back to back scenes where Kristian turned around to look at me, and I looked up into his blue eyes, and I just melted. And I was like, okay, thank you, got it. And I mean, that was who I was feeling had been the best in the auditions anyway, but she just totally confirmed it for us, that she was feeling what we were also feeling watching them. Mm-hmm. But we obviously, if she had said that she didn't feel chemistry with him, we probably would have gone with someone else.
Well, and I mean, the chemistry is so palpable, and the scenes are just so personal, and they just feel like very natural to the two of them. And I'm curious how much of that was on paper, and how much leeway did they have to kind of play off of each other and interact with each other, and how much of that ended up on screen, because it just feels so natural to the two of them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and a lot of it is, I'm, as you probably know, because we've talked about other films of mine, I'm very, very collaborative with my actors. And I always let them know that they have full permission to, go off on a tangent if they want to, that for me, the script is very much like a blueprint. And one of the things that I love about film, as opposed to theater, of course, is that, if you don't get everything on take 1, you just go back and get it on take 2. So I'm very happy when they decide to go on a tangent, and they did go on quite a few of them. And a lot of that did end up in the film. And I think part of that also leads to what you see on the film with just the connection that they have. Like, because I feel like when a scene falls off the page and suddenly they find themselves kind of riffing on stuff, they're just so zoned into one another because they don't know where the scene is going to go. And that really kind of plays into their connection. And certainly, I'd like to add that we did that approach full on for the scenes with Hera and her family, because I very much felt that I was not in a position to write a scene for a Filipino family, especially a scene that's going to happen half in Tagalog. So those scenes were entirely improvised by the actors. So I went in and I sort of had a shape to that. I needed this beat and this beat and this beat, and we need to end here and we need to start here. And, we work out the blocking. But then when we actually did the scenes, we really let them kind of show us how that would play out in a Filipino home. And they kind of led it quite a bit.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that, because I was going to ask about those scenes, because I mean, my background is Portuguese, and I find that there's a connection with how the families interact and this feeling of being obligated to your parents. And I'm like, how did he manage to get all of that into the screen? It's so real.
Well, I'm so glad to hear you say that, and especially the way that language plays out. I'm very interested in language and the way that language plays in films. And I had they weren't fights, but some conflicts with some of the money people on this about keeping the subtitles off. Because my feeling is very much, people obviously who grew up in multilingual homes, but then the rest of us who maybe didn't, but had friends who were growing up in multilingual homes, like you go to someone's house and their parents speak Spanish or Hungarian or Cantonese or whatever, and the parents kind of speak in that mishmash of both languages, and the kids respond in English, and you get it. Like, you don't need subtitles. I know what's going on. Like, and I feel that experience was so I don't know if it's uniquely Canadian, but it feels kind of quintessentially Canadian. So I wanted to leave those scenes that way without those subtitles. And the two actors who I got at the karaoke place, who played the mom and dad, were so amazing with, in addition to all the other stuff I was putting on their shoulders, I would say, this take, could we have like 70% Tagalog and 30% English? Like, this take, could we have 40% Tagalog and 60% English? And they were just masterful at mixing them together, often over the course of a single sentence.
So the movie is so much fun. It's such a a nice thing to watch during these times when, you're kind of stuck inside and you haven't seen anybody for a while. And here comes this little unassuming romance that just leaves you feeling great. And I'm curious, like, I know that the release date was pushed clearly because of what's happened. So now what? The movie's going to be out there. What are you working on next?
Well, the next thing is, I mean, after we sort of give birth to this in theaters, I'm actually working on a thriller about an identity thief that I'm very interested in. It's kind of loosely inspired by an actual thing that happened in the news in Toronto about a year ago. A woman who had like 20 identities on the go at the same time, which is really interesting. But there was also a real interesting thing because she was a new Canadian, and so she was kind of performing, this kind of established white Canadian middle class, all these characters that she had sort of picked out by stealing their identities. And it's a really interesting story. The more I get into it, the more kind of fascinated I am by it and by her. So yeah, I'm working on that, hopefully for like next year or the year after.
Well, that's fabulous. I can't wait to see that. Thank you again for your time. Congratulations with I Propose We Never See Each Other Again After Tonight. I love saying the name of that movie. It's so lovely. It's so fun. Congratulations on the movie. It's wonderful, and best of luck. And I can't wait to talk to you again about your next one. It's going to be amazing. It sounds great.
Indeed. Thank you.